This story is about battle. There's one kind of battle we all fear. Not with swords, but the one we fight deep inside. The kind of battle where every man hesitates, where even the brave falter. Would you run or stand? Today, we tell the story of those who never ran. From the frozen edge of the world, they rose, the Norse, the Vikings. And when they came, Europe trembled. Asterisk, so, let's begin the story. Asterisk, far beyond the warm shores of the Mediterranean where olive trees sway in golden light, and the marble cities of Rome once thrived, there lies a realm unlike any other. A place not of luxury, but of relentless hardship, where the sun vanishes for months and winter holds the land in an iron grip. This is Scandinavia, a land of stone and storm, of snow-choked valleys and silent, frozen forests. It is not a place that welcomes life, tests it, and in that trial, it forged one of the fiercest, most resilient cultures the world has ever known. The Norse dot in this world of extremes. Life was dictated by a brutal calendar, 6 months of ghostly light. The midnight sun turned summer into a sleepless dream, and then winter arrived, long, black, and merciless. The aurora danced in the sky, as if mocking the people below who struggled simply to survive. This was not a land of abundance. Only 5% of the soil could bear crops. Every fish caught, every sheep born, every fire lit was all part of a ceaseless battle against the cold. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was easy. Mistakes were not just punished, they were deadly. In such a place, weakness could not survive. And so, the Norse became strong. They were a people bound by necessity. Their society valued what could be done, not what could be said. Where Mediterranean cultures idealized philosophers, the Norse praised those who built, who hunted, who carved ships from trees and survived winters that could crack stone. They didn't have cities, but longhouses, vast wooden halls packed with family, livestock, and warmth. In these smoke-darkened spaces, children learned the stories of gods and monsters. Elders passed down wisdom etched in ice and blood. And in those same halls, men and women forged plans not just to endure, but to conquer. Because the land was never enough, population grew. The old system where land passed to the eldest son left many young men with nothing but a sword, a name, and a hunger for more. And in their veins, that hunger ran deep. The Norse did not dream of peace. They dreamed of glory. Their eyes turned outward beyond the fjords, past the shadowed isles, toward the unknown. But to reach it, they needed a weapon unlike any other. They built it not from iron or fire, but from wood. The Longship, sleek, fast, terrifying. These vessels were unlike anything the world had seen. Flexible enough to ride the waves, light enough to be dragged across land, shallow enough to sail up rivers, powered by oars and sail alike. And above the prow, a carved beast, a dragon, a serpent, its eyes fixed on foreign shores. These were not boats. These were blades cutting through the sea toward destiny. Yet, not all Norsemen were warriors. Behind every raid stood a culture-rich, layered, deeply human dot. Their gods were not perfect. They were flawed, mortal-like, bound by fate, just like the people who worshipped them. Odin, the All-Father, gave an eye for knowledge. Thor, thunder god, defended the common folk with hammer in hand. Freya, goddess of love and war, ruled beauty and death in equal measure. And Longship, the trickster, walked the line between creation and chaos. The Norse did not seek paradise. They sought a good death. They believed that when the end came, when Ragnarok arrived, they would fight beside their gods, shoulder to shoulder in the firestorm of final battle. And that belief changed everything, because to them, fear was useless. Death was not the end, it was a beginning. And if you died with sword in hand, your name would echo forever in Valhalla. But not all of their power came from myth. Their society was strangely progressive for its time. Women could own land, divorce their husbands, lead households, men held real power. They gathered at the Thing, a proto-parliament where laws were spoken, not written. Justice was decided by voice, not decree. Their system valued honor, loyalty, and courage, not class or birth. But even this stability could not hold back what was coming. By the 8th century, tension boiled beneath the surface. Population pressure, political consolidation, inheritance laws, ambition, and one more critical factor: climate change. The medieval warm period brought slightly longer growing seasons, but also opened frozen waters. The North Sea grew calmer. The ice thinned. New horizons appeared, and suddenly, the ships could go farther. At the same time, the Norse became aware of something else. Wealth south of them, sitting unguarded. Monasteries along the British and Frankish coasts, sacred and filled with treasure. Gold relics, silver crosses, gemmed books, none of it protected. They had God, but the Norse did not fear God. They feared nothing, and soon their patience would end. Scouts returned from Frisian and Anglo-Saxon ports with tales of fat trade routes, of holy relics worth kingdoms, of abbeys filled with food, drink, and soft men who never held a blade. The Norse listened, and they remembered. They sharpened axes, packed ships, whispered to their gods, and then they sailed. They did not announce themselves with flags or diplomacy. They arrived with fire and steel in the year 793 AD. Their longships approached the holy island of Linus. It was a place of peace, a monastery. Pilgrims came there to feel close to heaven. But that morning, heaven did not come. Hell did. From the sea rose dragon-headed ships, sails red as blood, oars churning like the beating of war drums. The monks heard them too late. Church bell rang once, twice. This was not blind rage, it was precision. They moved through the cloisters, cut down the fleeing, stripped the altars, broke the crosses. What could not be taken was burned, and what could be taken they took. The world gasped. Christians cried out, believing the end of days had come. But for the Norse, it was only the beginning. Lindisfarne was the spark. Europe, fragmented and soft, had no answer, and the Norse knew it. The raid on Lindisfarne shattered the illusion. For centuries, Christian Europe had seen the North as a distant wilderness. Harsh, yes, but not dangerous. The Norse changed that in a single day, and they didn't stop. They returned to their fjords, their ships heavy with gold, silver, and slaves. Word spread like wildfire across the longhouses and icy harbors. Men gathered by torchlight, listening as returning warriors told of weak monasteries, slow kings, and lands where wealth lay unguarded by steel. Europe had treasures. The Norse had ships. The storm had begun. The attacks escalated. By the 800s, Norse longships struck like lightning along the coasts of Ireland, England, and Francia. Monks begged for protection. Kings scrambled to fortify their shores, but nothing could contain the tide. The Norse had mastered the art of asymmetric warfare. They didn't march armies or lay sieges. They struck fast at dawn or dusk with no warning. They disappeared before retaliation could even gather, and they struck where no one else could. Because their ships could do the impossible, shallow draft keels let them sail up rivers, the Seine, the Thames, the Rhine. To the horror of Europe, geography itself offered no safety. A river once meant protection. Now it was a highway for terror. They sailed inland for weeks, then struck a church, a town, even a capital. Paris, London, your call felt the longship's shadow. They took what they wanted, burned what they didn't, banished with the tide. But the Norse weren't only raiders. That's what made them unstoppable. They were traders, too. They came to barter silk, furs, slaves, amber, weapons. They were settlers, building towns in Ireland, in Scotland, in Normandy, and beyond. They didn't just destroy. They transformed. Dublin, founded by Norsemen. York, rebuilt in Viking hands. Novgorod and Kiev, formed by Norse traders, the Rus, would lay the foundation of the Russian state. Their ambitions stretched across continents, from the icy fjords of Greenland to the sands of Baghdad. They crossed the Atlantic and reached North America. Centuries before Columbus, they called it Vinland. They did not just expand, they explored the edges of the known world, and through it all, they carried their culture, their gods, their myths, their honor. The warriors of the North were not just men with axes. They were guided by a deeply rooted code, an honor system so embedded in society, it governed everything from family disputes to war. Your reputation was your worth, to be known. As brave, loyal, and generous was more valuable than gold. To be labeled coward or traitor was a stain worse than death. If you were wronged, you answered. If you were insulted, you responded. Blood demanded balance. But they had a system for that too. They practiced wargled blood money, a codified payment for injury or death, a practical solution in a brutal world. Even justice was shaped by survival. They also held assemblies called the Thing, where free men debated, judged, and ruled. This was not tyranny. This was proto-nocracy. Long before parliaments rose in Europe, the Norse were speaking, voting, deciding together. Even the poorest man could rise. Warriors gained glory through merit, not title. A farmer who fought bravely could stand beside a jarl. Leadership was earned, not inherited blindly. The Norse were freer than much of Europe, especially their women. Norse women held rights alien to the Christian kingdoms. They owned land. They ran households. They divorced abusive husbands. Their stories, too, were remembered in sagas, in law, in stone, and through it all, their gods watched. But unlike the gods of Rome or Jerusalem, the Norse gods battled and bled. They faced fate, knowing they could not win. Ragnarok was not a salvation story. It was the end. A final battle where even gods would die. Odin would fall to Fenrir. Thor would slay the world serpent, then perish from its venom. But they fought anyway, and that, above all, defined the Norse spirit. They knew the end would come. They fought because it was right, not to survive, but to meet death on their feet. This philosophy bled into everything. Even their final rituals when a Viking died, he was often buried with the things that defined him: his sword, his tools, even his ship. They believed that death was not an escape, but a journey to the halls of Valhalla, or to hell, but never into nothingness. And so they faced death as they faced life, head on, by the 10th century. The Viking Age had reached its zenith. Entire regions were under Norse control. The Dainola in England, Normandy in France, parts of Ireland, Scotland, and even Sicily. But nothing lasts forever. Christianity crept northward. Missionaries came first. Then kings converted for diplomacy, for survival, for power. The old gods were pushed to the edge. Stone churches replaced sacred groves. Runes gave way to Latin, and Odin's ravens flew a little less often. The Norse didn't vanish. They adapted. They became knights, dukes, kings. They blended into Europe's fabric, but left their mark like fire leaves. Charcoal, the descendants of Viking kings, ruled England. Norman warriors, descended from Norse settlers, conquered half of Europe. Even in their fading, they left a legacy that refused to die today. They live on, not just in history, but in the bones of our world. In language, words like sky, knife, and window come from Norse tongues. In law, in governance, in exploration, and in myth, Thor still thunders in comic books. Odin walks modern pages. Vikings ride our screens. But these modern reflections cannot fully capture who they were, because the Norse were not just warriors. They were farmers, poets, builders, sailors, mothers and daughters, brothers and sons. They built ships that carried not just weapons, but memory. They changed not only maps, but minds. And when we look at the long arc of history, we see that the Norse didn't just raid. They rewrote the rules of what a civilization could do when surrounded by nothing but cold, hardship, and sea. They emerged from the frozen north with fire in their blood. They crossed oceans. They defied empires. They faced gods, fate, and death without flinching. They did not just conquer lands. They conquered time. Asterisk, only the brave dared to cross those icy seas, and only the bold will stay to hear the rest. So, if you're still here, one of them, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and prepare